Hello, I'm Susan Van Sickle, and I'm Consulting Director here at Christian Adoption Consultants. Today we wanted to talk a little bit about the reality of brokenness in adoption. So often we talk about the beauty in adoption, and I often even use the hashtag adoption is beautiful. I really believe God's heart and the message of the gospel is on display in adoption. I'm also convinced adoption is an incredible and brave choice that both a birth and adoptive family can step into when they believe it's the best option available for a child. But too often, we only talk about the beauty in adoption, and it's easy to completely miss the other side of the story, and it's a really important one. Adoption always begins with brokenness. If things were as they should be, all parents would be able to raise their children. Families would always stay together, and fathers would always be actively engaged. In a perfect world, people wouldn't struggle with addiction, there wouldn't be interpersonal violence, and parents would always have the financial and emotional resources they need. Every pregnancy would be planned, and every addition to the family would be eagerly anticipated. Often, the brokenness isn't just experienced by the birth family, though. I work with adoptive families who have lived through their own brokenness. Infertility, miscarriage, child loss. Many families step into adoption because of their own loss. They want to grow their family, but they've been heartbreakingly unable to do so biologically. Stories of childhood cancer, secondary infertility, an attempt after attempt at fertility treatments, miscarriage, even the death of a child, these are all results of a fallen world and brokenness for hopeful adoptive families as well. We also live within a really broken system. Too often it's easier for a woman to obtain an abortion, to deal with an unexpected pregnancy, than it is for her to find practical support and assistance to parent her child. There's also differences in state laws and literal federal oversight. And so there are people and even adoption professionals who take advantage of everyone in the adoption triad for their own benefit. There's racism and classism, and that impacts adoption. And ethical issues can be found in the domestic, foster care, and international adoption arenas. Perhaps most importantly is the loss and adoptee experiences. Too often, the child at the center of an adoption story and their brokenness can be overlooked. They have lost the opportunity to be raised by their birth family, and they've lost an important connection. So issues like identity and belonging and abandonment, those are all commonly wrestled through. The fact that many adoptive parents may not recognize these issues or be willing to have some of these tough conversations with their child, that can add to the loss and the grief that an adoptee experiences. In the end, someone walks out of the hospital with empty arms and broken hearts. And that heartache doesn't just last for several weeks postpartum. The brokenness in adoption is a reality for everyone in the adoption triad for truly a lifetime. So, where does this leave us? It would be easy to throw up our hands in frustration and decide not to step into something so broken. We could ignore the mess that's inevitable in adoption, or we could whitewash and try to cover it up, only talking about the pretty parts. But glossing over hard things in life is never the answer. Just like everything else in this world, sin has impacted the way things were intended this side of heaven. And we need to decide how to engage with it. So how do we step into the brokenness of adoption with the hope of the gospel, knowing that God has the power to redeem and to restore? Surely it's no easy task, but there are practical ways we can acknowledge the bittersweet of adoption. First, we can tell the truth about adoption, sharing the good and the hard. We can work to ensure we don't gloss over the beauty that can be found in adoption and make less of the grief and loss that's involved. We can make space for adoptees, children and adults alike, to share the love they have for their adoptive and birth families, and the complex emotions they uniquely wrestle with. We can ensure birth families are honored, cared for, and have resources for the long haul. We can advocate for change, calling for ethics in adoption, holistic care for expectant and birth families, and we can even work for biological families to stay together whenever possible. We can hold the celebration and the grief that comes with adoption as equally important and valid. So let's roll up our sleeves together, because hard things, and especially the people involved, are worth it. The reality is, adoption is beautiful and hard and amazing and broken. Like the rest of life, it's a complex mix of realities. Ultimately, though, brokenness pushes us to a healer. It gives us hope that one day God will faithfully restore all things. And until then, it provides a desperate dependence on His ability to guide us through the beautiful brokenness of it all.